Imagine a Star Wars show without a lightsaber. That would feel pretty different, right? Well, Andor has been described as the Star Wars show that feels the least like Star Wars. It is different. But before I get started, that's your warning. Now, compared to Disney's mismanagement of other projects, this one feels intentional. Nothing feels out of place because Andor doesn't prioritize fitting into the canon. It creates its own deliberate narrative, and by doing so, reveals the key to solving Disney's biggest problem. Nostalgia. A feeling everyone's familiar with, even though it's hard to describe. My preferred definition is a longing for a home that no longer exists or has never existed. Nostalgia is a sentiment of loss and displacement, but it is also a romance with one's own fantasy. That's from cultural theorist Svetlana Boym. She views nostalgia as a symptom of our age, a historical emotion that yearns for a different time, not place, which Andor executes better than any other Disney Plus series. Disney is built on baiting audiences with nostalgia, yet they constantly fail to fulfill that promise of reimagining past projects because they don't understand how nostalgia works. The formula has two parts. The first deals less with place and more with revisiting a time. That means capturing tone.
No. I went in and got this myself.
How? How's that possible? It was sealed on the Imperial Naval Base in Steergard.
Look, you got the money, I got the box. What else is there to talk about?
I'll give you another 1,000 credits to tell me how you got it.
Another 1,000.
Done. How?
Atmosphere.
You just walk in like you belong.
Takes more than that, doesn't it?
What, to steal from the Empire? What do you need? A uniform, some dirty hands, and an Imperial toolkit. They're so proud of themselves. They don't even care.
Setting.
They're so fat and satisfied. They can't imagine it.
Can't imagine what?
That someone like me would ever get inside their house.
Basically the context in which the original story happened. In A New Hope, Tatooine is just a desert planet. What makes it interesting is how the struggle of living in a desert is emphasized by everything that occurs. People oppressed under military occupation reflect how people are trapped in a sandy wasteland. The cantina houses shady black market dealings made necessary for survival, which feels similar to desperately seeking shade from the twin suns that boil the planet's surface. When Disney revisits Tatooine in Book of Boba Fett, it feels dull. The audience can't re-experience their time felt on Tatooine because it should no longer exist. Except that it's the same place with basically the same events going on. More shady black market dealings, more occupation, more harsh desert life. That doesn't produce nostalgia because the audience doesn't feel displaced from this location. It's a carbon copy, just worse due to no novelty. With nothing new to experience, Tatooine feels hollow and boring. There's no room for the audience to participate in their fantasy. Whatever has been updated isn't challenging or surprising because the focus is on recreating a place more than reimagining the time. So if nothing has changed in all that time, and the planet is boring by itself, why bother with nostalgia at all? Sure, that feeling grabs people's attention, but it also backfires when mishandled, something Disney has a long history of doing. In short, they weaponize nostalgia, whereas Andor neutralizes it. Andor corrects Disney's mistake by placing itself next to familiar events. It's a side plot or tangential to the main story the audience already knows, allowing them to feel displaced from the familiar, yet rewarding them with the unfamiliar. Like the other Star Wars shows, Andor goes to all new places despite happening in the same galaxy. However, when it revisits spots like Coruscant, it understands how nostalgia works and uses it effectively. Seeing Mon Mothma navigate politics while funding the rebels captures that time period of the prequels where Padme dealt with similar issues. That isn't a simple copy and paste though. Andor's political games are much more dangerous, with much greater stakes and different rules. The context is explored further through character references like Palpatine, whom fans know yet haven't seen in this time period before.
I spoke with Emperor Palpatine last night, and he's assured me that the ISB will be taking the lead going forward.
Again, feeling displaced but rewarded with new information. Plus, it's organic and common sense for the characters to talk about him. There's nothing cheap or forced about the references made in Andor, because it doesn't pander to fans. It celebrates the rich history of Star Wars by finding clever connections for it to exist beside. Luthen's dual identity is a prime example. His public appearance as a curator of ancient artifacts offers opportunities to explore other cultures and stories in the galaxy. His private identity sheds light on the burdens behind birthing the rebellion, a blend of the new and the old. Nostalgia can only work with both. Okay, so Andor's timeline fulfills the displacement from a familiar home. But how does it tackle the romance with one's own fantasy? Well, I believe the romance is found in exploring and participating in the new world building. The writers understand Star Wars doesn't belong to anyone. Each viewer develops their own relationship with it, their own fantasy. That acknowledgement makes Andor's execution of nostalgia successful. The audience appreciates a return to a home that no longer exists, because they also experience a new expansion, one that renews the romance with their own fantasy. What's even more impressive is how the show captures nostalgia without sacrificing its own story, mainly because Disney constantly does the exact opposite. Andrew Stanton, the director of WALL-E and Finding Nemo, was one of the co-writers for the Kenobi series, and he spoke out about the constraints of working within canon. It has to go through such a rigorous, does that fit the canon? And I feel like it's bittersweet. The reason that happens is because people care, but it also kind of doesn't allow, sometimes, things to venture beyond where maybe they should to tell a better story. So it can sometimes really handicap what I think are better narrative options. And here is his main point. And so I was frustrated sometimes. Not a lot, but I just felt it wasn't as conducive to the story. So I love it when something like Andor is in a safe spot and it can just do whatever the heck it wants. The way Disney goes about telling its stories is stopping the creators from creating, from telling better stories, because Disney just wants to play it safe and they want to do something so familiar. If people complain about it, they'd practically be complaining about the original stuff being referenced, which it's sacrilege, right? My point is Andor neutralizes nostalgia in favor of a better plot. In fact, Andor chose to sacrifice the one thing that Disney refuses to: Star Wars. The team behind Andor didn't try to establish what that is or means. By not bothering to tell a Star Wars story, they weren't restricted from telling the best story they could. The writing is so good, it doesn't require the brand or franchise to prop it up. What I'm saying is, Andor offers high-quality storytelling that just happens to take place a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.